Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator. Ladies and gentlemen, it is indeed an honor for me to be here and to be talking to you about a country, Somalia, that has made a lot of memorable history in the recent past, mostly negative than positive. So I thought before I advance into my this afternoon's intervention, I wanted to give you a brief background of Somalia. I'm sure most of you academicians and policy writers are aware of. It is important to note the contradictory realities in Somalia, a country where heavy rains with floods destroy life and property once every 3 years. 1 year every 3 years brings floods and rains that destroy livelihood. It is followed by drought destroying livelihoods once every 3 years. So every 3 years, 1 year devastation comes from water and floods, and the other year from drought. Therefore, only 1 year every 3 years is considered to be a normal year. It is also ironic to note that this is the country with the longest coastline in Africa, one of the most diverse fish species and very variable fish, and adequate arable land is available in this country, yet there is persistent and serious food shortages in such a country. These are contradictions. One other important issue that's also associated with the Somali society is pastoralism. Most of you are aware what pastoralism is. Pastoralism is a fiercely independent culture in terms of life and community associations. This is a culture where one is in charge of one's own unitary family and discharges his own family duties without necessarily consulting beyond his wife and his older children. The pastoralist independent mind, totally independent mindset has not been easy to adapt and to reconcile with the new phenomena of state and government, which are basically built on compromises, public ownership and common public goods financed collectively and shared on agreed terms. Somalia got independent, as you all know, 57 years ago, this coming July 1960. The Somali people immediately democratically elected their first president in 1960. They also elected again 4 years later in 1964 and again in 1968. 3 elections elected democratically, the first elections that took place in Africa. In 1969, military took over, which was also the norm at that particular point in time in the history of Africa. Surely, therefore, making the assumption, going back in history, it would not be an exaggeration to reminisce positively that Somalia is a country which has now been 25 years in chaos, was also a very democratic country, and perhaps the first country in Africa that had such a democratic system during the start of the independence. The period of 1969 to 1991 was the military rule. 1991 was the ousting of the military leaders. This was followed by vying for power and territory by various clans and sub-clans, and the start of the prolonged civil war. The immediate effect of the civil war, as you have seen across the globe, was that everyone first withdrew to their own base of their respective clans for safety, looting and taking with them everything that they laid hands on, while retreating back to their own corners. It was the beginning of the end of anything that resembled systems and government. Others rushed across the borders. That's why you find a lot of Somali refugees everywhere today. Every country there are some Somalis who are refugees, but now settled citizens of those countries, as there was no government, no public security, no public order, and all public properties became looted, destroyed, and transformed beyond recognition. The period of 1991 to 2001 was one of the destruction of state. This is the period when everything was destroyed in the country. During this period, the Somali nation lost assets and anything that was associated with national sovereignty. Everything that was associated with national sovereignty was destroyed at this particular point in time. Let me just enumerate some of the things that we have lost that were basically part of our sovereignty. We lost our currency. It just disappeared, lost value and disappeared. We also lost control of our air. It needed authority to ensure security for those who used it, namely the air travelers, and someone had to step in and manage it. The UN took it over, while the airtime for the telephone was also anybody's property. The 252, which is the zip code of Somalia, had to be managed by someone international organization took over. We lost control of our shores, our oceans, our seas, the longest in the continent, and we would not protect them from gainful looters of our marine resources at no cost. Ladies and gentlemen, we could also not protect our oceans from being used as the dumping grounds for dangerous material with total impunity. We lost our national assets, deposits, liquid deposits in the banks, foreign and national, and we also lost everything that we had in the cities, destroyed or sold and bought by willing buyers and sellers. We lost our traveling documents. Our passports became worthless, our IDs became worthless, and we lost all kinds of values by the nation. Somali universities and schools, which were known to be relatively competitive, were destroyed, and all the certificates and testimonials also lost value. The very system that produced me and many successful Somalis of my generation who enjoyed free state schooling just disappeared over this period that I just mentioned. The brain drain to the country was unimaginable. Everyone with the means to get out got out and reestablished himself or herself outside. Our embassies and consulates, 50 of them or even a bit more, ceased to operate. They were disconnected totally from the country. Some of the embassy properties have been rented, sold out, or otherwise used for other purposes, partly to sustain those who work in those properties. The smooth ride that I once enjoyed in the Somali Airlines from Washington DC to Mogadishu also disappeared. And the planes and other assets of the agency met the same fate as other national assets. It is quite a struggle now to come out and in of Mogadishu. You cannot imagine how many countries and how many steps I had to go through to come here to you yesterday. Somalia commercial shipping line also disappeared. And the ships and the properties became the property of those who worked in them. Commercial funds, savings banks, and other financial institutions were also looted and totally disappeared, both liquid assets and physical buildings. All government records and registers of property ownership also destroyed, looted, which created a total confusion in the country as to who owned what property in that country. Suddenly, we Somalis became, as you all know, with people with no functioning system. There was once a serious talk of Somalia becoming a UN-mandated territory, which was basically tantamount to recolonization of the country. In the eyes of many good Somalis, watching helplessly and desperately outside and inside the country. You now have, ladies and gentlemen, new rich people in the country. You have also old memories gone. 27 years is a very long time. People left, people died, killed, or naturally deceased. And you have no records, a total chaos when some of the governments arrived, total chaos. It is very difficult to imagine what will happen to this very peaceful and very beautiful and prosperous city of Boston if all of a sudden everything is suspended. Can you imagine police and all security personnel disbanded and all the records destroyed? In such a situation, all of a sudden you will find powerful and armed individuals appearing in your doorstep with fake documentations claiming the ownership of your home of 40 years. The situation then truly becomes one of the fittest, of the survival of the fittest. It is a barbaric situation that we do not wish for anyone to go through, having witnessed it in Somalia. Ladies and gentlemen, in the year of Africa's independence, 1960, newly independent countries simply took over offices already run by well-trained local staff. I am not sure if the world has ever experienced anything like that of Somalia. That experience of Somalia, I always argue, is a very unique one, where everything is ground zero, where all structures, all systems, skilled people were all totally obliterated, all records destroyed or looted. It was under these circumstances and the existence of various local administrative structures, also on their own merit, very strong in the country, that every new country started to endeavor towards normalizing such a situation. So, where does one start? In a situation where there is no memory, there is no record, no national police, no national army, no systems, no currency, and no physical office space for one to operate from. You are appointed all of a sudden as a minister of such a nation, and you stand there feeling empty and desperate and very helpless. This is how every Somali government felt until very recently. And we still are not out of the woods. We are not out of the woods. Ladies and gentlemen, in the period 2000-2011, that 12-year period was a period I call soul-searching and internal reconciliation period. I would say that the real awakening of the new Somalia was 2012, not very far back, when a new government was elected through a parliamentary system that the international community welcomed. That government was then organized as recognized as a legitimate government of Somalia for the first time in 25 years. This then made the beginning of piecing things together, trying to explore where to start. The government succeeded in assisting that particular government that was elected 2012, succeeded in assisting various regions to establish their own government in a federal system, their own local government in a federal system. They have done a lot of good work on which we are now building. The process of electing the new parliament in late 2016 and the new president early 2017 were seen as even more transparent and more democratic, few steps ahead of the last one. There is a feeling, therefore, that Somalia is on its path to full democratization, underpinned by predictable and mature policy setting. So, where do we stand now? Current situation. The current government, led by His Excellency President Muhammad Abdullahi Muhammad Farmajo and his Prime Minister, His Excellency Hassan Ali Khaire, emphasized from the beginning that the government priorities will be very clear and will be delivered through a system that is collaborative between the people and the government and very transparent with the support of the international community. Priorities of this government, of which I am a member, ladies and gentlemen, include security, number one, economic development, public service, and good governance. These are the four major priority areas. These priority areas are not just a rhetoric, but indeed already acted upon. As you know, ladies and gentlemen, any nation's prestige and sovereignty depend on its ability to cover its cost and provide adequate services to its people, so that these very people are enabled to contribute to the success of their own lives and to the success of their government. In Somalia, the prolonged civil war destroyed this function, and it is only now that we are climbing out of the dark hole. Somalia's national debt, as you very well know, is well over $5 billion, and we owe to different countries and international organizations, including global national institutions, the World Bank, the IMF, African Development Bank, Islamic Development Bank, and other smaller regional organizations. In May 2016, the federal government of Somalia entered into a 12-month staff monitoring program called SMP to help economic reconstruction efforts and establish a track record of policy and reform implementation, covering May 2016 to April 2017. Based on satisfactory performance, the IMF management approved a follow-on SMP program in June 2017, covering May 2017 to April 2018. The SMP, as you all know, focuses on economic and fiscal efforts, creating sustainable policies for economic growth, public financial management, and strong institutions to manage this process. This is what the SMP is all about, to establish you as a solid institution-based government and a country. Given that Somalia has adopted a federal system like that of the US, we also have a lot to learn from other older federal systems. Under the SMP, let me just give you what we have been able to do. One, tangible progress has been made to improve fiscal, financial, and statistical institutions and capacities, as well as state building. Now Somalia has a functioning, weak but functioning administrative institutions responsible for overseeing reforms. Number two, agencies and federal government agencies and federal member states are cooperating. And to date, we have been able to harmonize some of the taxes that were very impossible just a year ago. Number three, we have implemented several critical reform measures in public financial management and in the area of tax management overall. Number four, we are successfully implementing sales tax administration of 5% across the country, starting with Mogadishu, but also expanding to the rest of the country. Number five, we have prepared financial sector development roadmap. Number seven, the federal government, the federal cabinet and the parliament have passed long-standing laws, difficult to pass in the past, of public financial management, including telecommunication, financial management systems, statistics, anti-corruption, and money laundering, just to mention a few. Number seven, the currency reform roadmap has been concluded, and we are now ready to get assistance from the World Bank and the rest of the community to print our money, the shilling, and back to the Somali market. Number eight, fiscal reporting is also advanced and almost completed with the assistance of the IMF and according to the standards of the IMF. Number nine, intensive public-private partnership has been successfully undertaken by the federal government to attract, to encourage, and maintain investment and compliance to raise domestic revenue to finance Somalia's future. And number 10, a stronger working relationship has been nurtured and maintained with IFIs, international financial institutions, and Somalia is starting to be trusted with the funds provided by the international community, and our Somali taxpayers also started trusting the Somali system. Of course, we are very grateful. We are very grateful for those who have assisted us through thin and thick, stayed with us, but in the end, we are cognizant that it will be the effort of the Somali people and the government that will tilt the balance in the right direction for Somalia to fully return to the community of nations as a productive and valuable member in the international community. The Somali people, both at home and diaspora, are champions that will have to drive forward national progress and cement its subsequent transformation, like President John F. Kennedy, whose name this great institution bears, once said, the Somali people are asking the Somali diaspora and Somalis everywhere that Somalis must ask what their country can do for us, and not only what they can do for their country, and not what their country can do for them. That is why we all congregated in the country, coming from different places, trying to help the country. Tremendous diaspora coming every day to heed that call. Ladies and gentlemen, reforms, reconciliation, security, public services, good governance, and economic development are all subjects and topics that development academicians like you and policy makers, as they do in this university, excel in these areas. This is why the school is among the best. This school is among the best. If not the best, I am sure it is the best. This is why this school is being marked as one of the great institutions. We want Somalia to exit the period of cumulative, of speculative, containment-focused development policy on the part of the international community. We challenge academicians and opinion makers like you here to deepen your research on Somalia before the laboratory that Somalia constitutes disappears and normalcy ushers. And I can assure you normalcy is very boring. Very boring. There is no challenge in the world. Somalia is a challenge to everybody. They present something very new, something that nobody has seen. I don't think anybody has seen the situation of Somalia in other countries, in other countries, either Africa or elsewhere. Somalia indeed presents this beautiful, rich, but tragic at the same time, theatrical masterpiece that we all have to expect to end happily one day. What should keep you all on the edge of your seats is the fact that Somalia, as a resource-rich, potentially resource-rich country, both in land and sea, can become a regional and global contributor to peace and prosperity, both with its strategic location. Somalia can be the gateway to a landlocked Africa, the Far East, and the Middle East. It can also be a food basket to feed itself first and then feed food insecure countries in the Middle East, which are not very far from where we are. All these are real possibilities with the enormous political, economic, and fiscal reforms that my government is taking with the help of the international community. Therefore, instead of just paying to watch this masterpiece, I urge you all to play a part in the play and guide and shape to its happy ending with research, policy-driven and policy activism, and even take part in directing the play. In conclusion, I would, ladies and gentlemen, reiterate the great journey that Somalia and its people are undertaking. I thank all of those who have supported and continue to support Somalia to get out of the mess that it has been in to become a useful member of the international community. The fact remains, however, that the heavy lifting has to be done by Somalis everywhere in the world, diaspora or inside, in the same way that it was us, Somalis, who helped in the destruction of the country. I don't want to blame our difficulties on anybody else. On economic and recovery, Somalia needs more accelerated debt relief and getting access to the soft window of the international financial institutions. So as you study, as you prepare your policies, as you do your research, please speak on our behalf. In fact, we'll support you. To resolve the challenges of Somalia, we must all think innovatively and be bold on our solutions. We have to challenge, we can no longer stay within the safe confines of established literature or practice. We must not accept, we have to defy the concept of one size fits all. We must be bolder and we must explore new frontiers to resolve the problems that face our nations, including Somalia. In an interconnected world, ladies and gentlemen, where every nation is a valuable member of global solution, the question for all of us, and I want to leave you with, is what will Europe be today without the Marshall Plan? Thank you very much.
Dr. Beileh, I accepted introducing you if they gave me the first question.
Yes.
So I've been thinking, well, congratulations on all the progress made. This is very interesting for me particularly because I come from a country, Venezuela, that is not at the level of destruction you described, but the government is making a lot of efforts to get the country right where Somalia was at the beginning. And I wonder two things. I guess you've got a lot of people coming from the outside. You mentioned World Bank, IMF,
yes.
African.
Yes.
And you got lots of advice on how to get the country started and institutional capacity rebuilt.
Yes.
And I wanted to ask you, in this process, what do you think, what comes to mind as the key piece of advice, of key action that you would think was essential in recovering this? And I also want you to share, what's the worst piece of advice you got? What's the worst someone told you should do and you thought immediately, well, they had no idea what Somalia is about? So those two pieces
yes.
of advice.
Now, thank you very much. It's not very difficult to give you the best advice, the best piece, and that is you have to establish credibility and trust with your people. And you have to get their support. At the end of the day, every country has to be built by the people, the people who live in the country. And so the government should accept the fact that this is owned by the population, and so seek their acceptance of what you are doing. And the way to do that is, first of all, to be very humble with them, and more importantly, to be transparent with them. At the end of the day, they pay your bills, or you expect them to pay your bills. If you want to do that, they have to know where the money is going. You have to be accountable, you have to be transparent, and you have to even, I have committees working with me to implement the budget. Anybody who asks questions, any group, I bring them to the committee. So every month, what I have received and what we have spent, they are there to see. We got $2, how do we do it? Here or here, and they decide. And they get headache and they leave. They get headache and leave. What can you do with $2, right? So that is one. The other one that I would never advise is to act as you are big government and something. You are big and you can arrest people and all that. It doesn't work. It does not work. You have to bring your people together. There are two opposite issues. Bring your people, and the way to bring it is to have their trust. And the way to have their trust is to be transparent with the funds. I think the final issue will be you have to also get the same way that you seek the trust of your people, you have to seek the trust of the international community as well. You have to be clear on what you are asking for, and you have to be clear on how you want to use the funds, and you have to be accountable, and you have to be very clear. And there are a whole host of issues that you have to address. These are the two responses I have for you.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum assalam.
Aad baan ku salaamayaa mudane wasiir. Marka koowaad aad baad ugu mahadsan tahay khudbadda. Magacayga waxaa la dhahaa Xamse Mahdi, waxaana ka imid Hargeysa. Waxaana doonayaa inaan ku weydiiyo su'aal ku saabsan Somaliland.
Yes.
Marka waxaa ka dhawaajisay in
Don't you want to speak in English so everybody understands? I know you are Somalian. We are
yeah, I was
Somalis.
trying to be fast with my question, but if you ask, yeah.
No, go ahead.
My question is,
Yeah.
You said that one of the piece of advice that you give to people is, that you give to the federal government is to get the support of the people of the country.
Yes.
And my question is,
Yes.
to what extent does the federal government respect the sovereignty of people of Somaliland? And more specifically, what's the policy of the federal government towards its disagreement with Somaliland over the new project in Berbera with the Emiratis? Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's a very difficult question, as you very well know. Somalia had many problems, and one of the major problems is the problem of Somaliland. Of course, it's not a secret that the view of the Somali federal government is that Somalia is one. But Somali government federal government also recognizes that there are issues between Somalia and Somaliland. The principle of Somalia is one requires everybody to come to the table and talk about our differences. We really think that we are a small country anyway to start with, and we don't really see why we have to be different countries. I mean, this guy and me, we are coming from the same place, Somaliland. I am also from Somaliland. And I can assure you, even what you are calling Somaliland, there is no uniformity in views. No uniformity in views. Everywhere you go, no uniformity. We have to agree on one thing, that we all Somalis come together and value the things that we share more than anybody else. Same people, same language, same culture, everybody knows. So even the federalism issue can come to a question. But okay, of course, you can decentralize and call, federal system, but to secede is going to be a damage to the rest of the country. This is the view of the government, but that doesn't mean that the government will apply authority or has the authority to compel anybody to come or go. But it has to be to the Somali public to decide together. If somebody wants to leave, it has to get the consensus of everybody. That's my view. I really think that the other project that you spoke about, I think the Ministry of Foreign Affairs is working on that. But I think that is part of the sovereignty of this country. I told you how many pieces disappeared. I did not add Somaliland because I think still Somaliland is part of the whole system. But we have a long way to go to heal ourselves. There will be the years of healing and discussing and agreeing on one issue and agreeing on some general issues. Together is better than splitting. If you let some group go, you cannot stop other groups to go and everybody to go, because we are all clans. You see, we are all clans and sub-clans. Every sub-clan will want to separate, and sub-clan will separate. What do you think is Somaliland as a lump sum something? It's not. You allow one group to go, everybody will want to go, and you have opened the floodgates. And I think Somalis have to think about this very, very seriously. Very seriously. I hope I answered some of your question. Some parts of the question, anyway.
Mudane Kusuro, magacaygu waa Iman Ali. I came down from Maine.
Very good.
So I'm going to keep it into the finance area instead of foreign affairs. So there's a two-tier question. The first tier is, I know that, first of all, let me say congratulations on collecting the revenue in the past 3 months.
Yes.
And hopefully with the support of the people in the Mogadishu area,
Yes.
that you've stayed strong and telling them to pay the revenue.
Yes.
I myself, a week ago, paid my taxes to the IRS here.
Very good.
So if I don't, they're going to take it. So I think it's more like a cultural thing where we need to get, especially Somalia,
Yes.
where the past 27 years there was no IRS or Internal Revenue Services over there. So hopefully they might change their mind after you've been around for another 4 more years.
Okay.
So to get to the question here, the main source of revenue for the federal government of Somalia is the city of Mogadishu and
Yes.
the businessmen and the port and airport of Mogadishu.
Yes.
My question, I think I've watched a couple of videos and some of your articles I've read, is that there are ports in Bosaso, Puntland,
Yes.
and Kismayo, Jubaland, and the whole of Somalia as well. Are you guys working on a unified tax code?
Yes.
So that people who are upset with your policy in Mogadishu don't move their operations to Bosaso or Kismayo, or hopefully in the future, Hoboyo. So, and the other question within that is, I know that the previous administration had, and not just the previous administration, but the past 20 odd years, Somalia had issues with keeping track, and I do appreciate your government and President Farmaajo's government for making sure that you guys are keeping up with making sure that money is accounted for. So what is the punishment really for corrupt politicians, corrupt individuals who are willing to keep Somalia in the top 10, really number 1 for the past 20 odd years for being the most corrupt country? What is your policy? What is the government of Somalia's policy? Thank you.
Very good. Thank you very much. Great questions. I think the first one is everybody collected taxes. As you very well know, we have the federal government and also 5 state governments. They collect their taxes. They have their own balance sheet. They have the income side and they have the cost side. So most of the expenses that they make come from their own. But we are trying to make one lump sum budget, and we are trying to do that. The reason people always say we are collecting taxes from Mogadishu, Mogadishu is the capital of the nation, and everything that is good is in Mogadishu, and therefore everybody comes to Mogadishu. And I can assure you all the money, 90% of the money that we collect also is spent in Mogadishu, our capital. We also call international community to give big assistance to the port and the airport, and unlike other airports, because this is the capital city. But all that said, there is a need, a very dire need for us to harmonize taxes. And this is one of the agenda items of this year, remainder of this year and next year. We have already done some, and we will harmonize it. We will harmonize. We will even bring the budget together as much as possible, so people in the world can see where the budget is. What we are agreeing and discussing with my fellow ministers of the state governments is that we have to come together. We come together and we meet all the time, and we talk about what to harmonize now and what to harmonize next, and we have agenda items. We have agreed that at one point we have to know what our what our revenues are from everywhere. So we know the revenues, we know the expenses, and then we allocate resources, especially as we get more resources from the natural resources of the country. So I think we have come a long way in terms of agreeing to that. And we have come a long way. And I'm sure by the end of the year you will hear that we have harmonized a number of things. We are now it's going to be part of the SMP program, SMP that we will sign in May. Part of that will be total harmonization of taxes, and we agree, and budget and everything. Now the other question of corrupt practices, yes, we are still the lowest or the most corrupt nation. Now I don't know. I wrote to Transparency International, and I asked them to come and have a chat with me, because I don't know how they do it. You know, if you are going to take exam, you have to tell the student what to expect, and the course and how many papers you have to write, and But if you just stay somewhere and never come and talk to us, I wrote to them, they have not responded. I spoke to publicly that I am not satisfied. They don't come, they don't respond. They write whatever, and they cannot continue. I'm not saying we are not bad. We are bad, but we don't want to continue to be bad. We don't want to continue to be bad. It feels very bad to be at the bottom. So we are trying our best now. Some of the things that we have done, the budget is very transparent. And we have tried to register everybody that earns money from the budget. Everybody has an account today. Everybody's salary goes to the budget. There is no longer somebody, a boss of one office or the other office, getting money, cash, and counting money. No longer. And that's part of the transparency. Everybody's account, it goes to the account. We are also registering people, so if they are here, they get their money. If they are not here, they're no longer here. We are even registering the army forces, which is the most difficult in the rural areas. These are some of the things that have to contribute to our transparency, and therefore we have to get a higher grade. We have to get a better grade. But anyway, we will continue doing our best, and we will challenge these people to come. In fact, I'm trying to get a meeting with them in Washington, D.C., if they are around. If not, I am sure one of these days they will see that we are no longer the poorest student. We are no longer the poorest student in the class. We are serious now, and we are studying. I always give this example of some guy. We are studying very hard, and so this professor guy has to consider our effort and what we are doing, and he has to tell us that this and this area are no good. So next time our paper will be better. But if you don't dialogue, if you stay outside and write whatever, I'm sure there are consequences legally of why they have to destroy our name and our country. It will not be acceptable. So that's what we are doing. But we are doing what we can to correct all the issues that needs to be corrected with the help of the IMF. IMF says do this, and we do it exactly the way. This is what you do to get A in your class, right? Whatever the professor gives you is what you do. Otherwise, you will not get. He tells you to write a paper on Somalia, and you write on Eritrea, you get 0, right? You have an outline. So they have to give us an outline, and they have to correct our paper, not some other imaginary paper, right? Yes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Prem. Beileh, I want to ask you, 75% of the people of Somalia are youth,
Yes.
unemployed.
Yes.
So what's the agenda of the government for unemployed youths? Because they may cause insecurity.
Yes.
They may run away from the country. So what's the agenda of the government in that area? Thank you.
Well, the agenda, yes, you are right. 70% of our youth are young, 30 years. Well, it's very good if we can find jobs for them because the energy is there, but it's also a very difficult challenge for the government. Now, what we are trying to do, given our resources, what we have in hand, is asking the international community to provide pre-arrears arrangement funds, basically to create jobs, to re-establish the country, to do some of the things that create jobs. And those are first capacity building of every ministry so they can get jobs. And more importantly, to do infrastructure, in different places and different areas. And to do microfinance, small projects for microfinance. And to also open up scholarships so they can do higher training. Master's degrees are now becoming available for many countries. So we don't have the resources in our hands, but we are trying to put the agenda in place and put the environment right so that we can get resources from the rest of the world to address their own problems. In fact, one of the SMP 3 negotiations will be to create more jobs and to find money for more jobs. We had about 10 million or so last year just for that creation of jobs for the regions, including Benadir, and also for the other regions and for the federal government. And that is being increased. Now we are negotiating about 13 million of the same funds for creation of jobs. So we are trying our best. Unfortunately, we don't have space for them to be employed in the government because it's one of the constraints. You can only employ if your budget increases, but we have to find para-budget revenues, and that's what we are trying to do.
Hello, thank you for your speech. I enjoyed a lot listening to you, and I've been studying Somali for the past 3 years, and it's fascinating from where you've come from. And my question is directed on you have a phrase that you keep on repeating in your speech.
Yes.
You keep on saying, we are thankful for people that came to help us, and only Somalis can do it this time. Does that mean that the Somali people are ready for is it the condition of 2020 or 2021 AMISOM exit? Is that what you're trying to say? I wasn't sure what that phrase meant. Thank you.
Well, before I thanked anybody, I spoke about how Somalia destroyed itself. And I did not give any excuses for what Somalia has been through. It is Somali groups, different groups. Even if they got help from somebody else, it's basically the Somalis who destroyed the country. And I can also imagine what could have happened to that sovereign country if help did not come from the international community. If, for example, AMISOM, the African soldiers that came to Mogadishu, funded by the international community, if they are not in Mogadishu today, if they just withdraw, we have 24,000 soldiers in Mogadishu and around the south of the country. If they are not there, the situation would have been worse. The capacity building I also spoke about the brain drain. So our offices are being equipped by the international community. People are being trained and retrained by the international community. Every step of the way, we are getting assistance. Even on how to collect taxes, the international community is assisting. So on one side, I am saying that we have done the destruction, and therefore we have to do the rebuilding ourselves. We have to take the lead. We took the lead in this, we have to take the lead in this one. But I also cannot forget that the international community played a major role in assisting us do that. And that is what the phrases mean. I hope I understood your question. Okay, thank you.
I normally have an extreme distaste for Somali politicians,
Okay.
but I feel like today I'm born again. I like the degree of your humbleness and the ownership of the problem and your forwardness. My question to you is, do you have any policy, or your government, does they have any policy to bring Somali intellects back? Because we know that brain drain is real. I went to Somalia in 2013,
Yes.
and I feel like, really, even the professors there were like, not qualified to teach.
Yes.
So do you have a policy to entice, or to bring back? There's a lot of us who are educated in the US
Yes.
that are tired of watching our own country talked about the way it's talked about in the media. It's a public, it's a PR nightmare. Do you have a policy?
Yes.
That your government has a policy to attract the right people, especially, particularly the Somalis, back to Somalia, so we can rebuild our nation back? Thank
Yes,
you.
very good. It's a great question. It's a very good question. The issue is, yes, we have a policy to bring everybody back, but we are constrained by two things. One, I cannot finance anybody from outside from my budget. The budget is very small, and the people I give salaries, the highest gets about $1,000. And people who live overseas, who own houses and things and mortgage and all that, history tells us, recent history, that they are not willing to come for that small amount. We also tried to get money from elsewhere, international community, and we have two funds, two separate funds. One that is intended for international, we call it international consultants. most Somalis, and they can also be others. But since others don't want to live in Mogadishu, normally they just Somalis come. We have that fund. We also have another fund for Somali locals, because the country has to be built by local people with the culture and everything that they have been through this. Don't forget, you have been away for a long time, and sometimes you are surprised that we are still there when you come. When they come from outside, they are more surprised than non-Somalis. And they stay there for 2 days and go back. Because the comparison is very stark. Comparison is very stark. So we advertise and we ask everybody to come, but you have to be willing to sacrifice, because that place is not easy. It is simply not easy place. And if you went there, you said you have been there, it's a very difficult place to work in. You have to pack up and go. You have to pack up and go, and you will get something. Whether that's something, don't make the comparison. Go there to help your country. If you decide, you will find something to do. You find something to do. You will be challenged, but also will find your money if you want to do that. But unfortunately, most of the people are engaged elsewhere. They are doing something. They are students. They have well-to-do jobs. I mean, they have good jobs, and it is very difficult for them to come. There is also some international organizations that hunt them and try to bring them back. Very few are coming, unfortunately. But if you pack up and if you go and if you are determined, we'll find something for you. That was one question, right?
Yes.
Yes. Next question.
Thank you. So thank you for being here. It's encouraging and even awe-inspiring to see the success of mobile money platforms in Somaliland with Zad and M-Pesa in Kenya.
Yes.
Where on the list of priorities, on your list of priorities, is the development of robust digital financial infrastructure?
Okay, digital finance is taking shape, whether we like it or not. It's something very, very dynamic. I think Somalis are very good in doing these things. But as far as the government is concerned, we are not there yet ourselves. I think we have other more pressing priorities. Bringing the money, we are using dollar in our economy. And I think the priority for us at this particular point in time is to print the money, the shilling, and at the same time make sure that there is clean money around, clean money moving around, and that we establish systems that can be trusted by everybody else. It is very difficult to transfer money from here to Somalia. Anything that sounds Somalia, there is a question mark on it, everywhere. And this is really our priority. We have to clean that impression, that perception. We have to clean it, and that is I'm sure we'll get there. The time will not wait. That will just take its own course. But these are other priorities. Put the systems in place, be transparency in place, and you know your customer issue is also very important. Whether you are sending the money from one door to the other of Somalia, Mogadishu, or coming from elsewhere, we have to work with the world, and we have to work very hard for the world to trust what we are doing, Somalis in Somalia and elsewhere. And I think when you recognize your issues is when you try to find solutions. We recognize that we have done damage to our country. We also recognize that we have to do heavy lifting ourselves. We don't deny all these things, and therefore we are addressing item by item.
Well, thank you very much for coming, and thank you again, Dr. Beileh.